In fact, I just asked Senator JD if he can finish by this year the Department of Housing, because if we finish it in the Senate, in the House, including BICAM, if we can finish it by October, then we can fund it for the 2017. Can you promise us that? Created, signed into law, so that we can fund it. In fact, if you assure me it will be finished, maghanap na ako ng pondo ngayon na itatabi natin para sa 2017, funded na ang Department of Housing.
Actually, for the information of everybody, we were so close to passing the creation of the Department of Housing last year, na talagang inabutan lang ho nung campaign period. That's why it was hard to get a quorum, especially in the House. But this time around, this early, we were able to have our first hearing already. So we want to make sure that we are targeting by next year to have this passed. And we are lucky that, Madam Chair, that next year, hopefully, because, you just had our first hearing, and we're lucky because my counterpart is the same person, no, in the House. So at least we will just continue what we have worked. So, and we are really proposing, because of what the Vice President has stated this year. It's really hard to just have a coordinating council, no, heading 6 different agencies, no, which have their own mandate. So I'm really proposing that, Madam, that we should prioritize this, and for the government to show that we are really serious in addressing the 5.5 million backlog. We really have to pass the Department of Housing, because otherwise, if we will just rely on a coordinating council, I don't think it will be possible. So, Madam, we will be rest assured. We'll try. I'll try.
We have a practice here. Pag advanced stage na from the previous Congress, you can adopt many of its proceedings if it's been sponsored, and pag napasa na natin ang second reading.
Yes, I will coordinate, Madam, with our counterpart in the House. So we will do our best.
Madam Chair, I just have a very quick statement lang ho. VP, I think we should also somehow come up with a different paradigm, no, in terms of housing. And kasi ngayon ho talaga the burden is with the national agency, with HUD-C and the Key Shelter Agency. But our experience ni Senator JV is make it an LGU business. No? Ibigay natin si LGU part of the responsibility. In fact, natutunan ko ho to kay former Secretary Leni Robredo na dapat gawin yung education, no, sa kanya as a local government responsibility. It's the same with the housing, dahil sila po yung nasa baba and alam ho nila yung nangyayari, alam nila yung information. Ang kulang nilang ho talaga is funds, no, kasi funds masyado malaki. One of the things that I'm trying to institutionalize is the not only creation of the local housing board, but creation of a local housing office na functioning executive function, na siya ang mandato niya. Number 1 is to collect information. Number 2 is to create housing projects, no, in coordination with the national. I think just like creation of a housing office in the national, dapat sa local rin po talagang i-institutionalize na natin yan.
I definitely agree with that, Madam Chair, in as much as marami talagang bagay would have been solved if the local government was more equipped to solve it. In fact, that is the main reason why we're asking the President to issue an executive order including the ILG in the board already. Because right now it's not the ILG is not a member of the board. So we go to a very circuitous process to get through the LGUs. So yun po talaga yung mahirap doon. Also, we also noticed, Madam Chair, that for many years, yung opisina po namin and all the shelter agencies, housing lang yung inaasikaso, forgetting that our office is housing and urban development. So we're also giving a big emphasis on that, considering that housing is actually dependent on urban development. We cannot have a comprehensive housing plan for the entire country if we don't look at the urban development side. So yun naman po yung parati ko nga, when I meet with the people from the office, parati ko sinasabi, para nakakalimutan nyo na may UD pa yung HUDC. So yun din. That is also the emphasis. But next slide, please. Just to give the other members an idea of what the bill, Department of Housing and Urban Development will entail, it will actually be a merger of HUDC and HLURB. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development, with this merger, will be in a better position to create synergy among the key shelter agencies. Kasi sinasabi ko nga kanina, ngayon, pag sinabi na sa amin ng key shelter agency, eto kasi yung mandate namin eh. Parang when people need houses, parang may choice sila, pupunta ba ako sa Pag-ibig, pupunta ba ako sa Shopsy, dapat sana hindi ganon. 'Di ba? Parang alam mo na kaagad kung saan, because the synergy is very clear. The coordination sana would be seamless. Pero since we don't have that much mandate, we have to contend with what we have. But again, hopefully that will be cured by the creation of the Department of Housing. The bill will give the DHUD Secretary the power to reorganize, merge, streamline, abolish, or privatize any of the attached key shelter agencies in consultation, of course, with the GOCC concerned and the Governance Commission on GCCs. Next slide, please. For the short term, HUDC will recommend an executive order. I was telling the committee about this a while ago, to establish a nationwide integrated land and ISF information system. HUDC will have to strengthen its capacity to manage this information. For the long term, there is also a need to mandate the creation of local housing boards because not many LGUs have local housing boards. And the local housing board is supposed to be the body that will prepare the local shelter plan. So, ang sabi ko sa opisina po ngayon, hindi tayo tutulong sa LGU kung wala siyang local housing board saka local shelter plan para lang mapilitan silang to set it up. So, this will be, if it's institutionalized in LGUs with standards on the proper composition, it will ensure its effectiveness. Next slide, please. The long-term goal is also to reduce the processing time across the KSAs and other concerned agencies. Ito po, Madam Chair, yung isa din na nakabigla sa akin when I went. Because I learned that the processing time for applying, not only from the side of the ISFs, but also from the side of the local developers, ang 2 years is already a good time. So this is the reason why wala masyado naienggan yung pumasok sa tagal ng proseso. Right now, we're in the process of streamlining the bureaucratic processes already. Halimbawa, SHOPC was already able to, meron silang isang proseso na from 27 documents are required, we were already able to lessen it to 9 documents. But I told SHOPC na hindi pa ako doon kontento kasi ang gusto ko makita, hindi lang yung 27 to 9 documents, pero ang gusto ko makita yung processing time. Sabi ko, kaya ba na yung 2 years gawin natin na 15 to 30 days lang? Sabi ni Ma'am Ana of SHOPC, kaya daw. But yun po yung ginagawa namin ngayon. 2 weeks ago, SHOPC and HLURB already entered into a memorandum of agreement. Ang gusto po sana namin, one-stop shop lang. Pupunta halimbawa sa opisina namin, it will be a G2G arrangement already, government-to-government arrangement. Nangyayari po ngayon, yung mga mahihirap, halimbawa nasa probinsya sila, wala na nga silang pambayad ng equity, contribute pa sila ng contribute para yung presidente nila makapunta sa Manila para asikasuhin yung papeles. And when the president comes, it is not just HUDC he goes to, but he goes to all these key shelter agencies, pinapabalik-balik. So yung pinaka-target po namin is for HUDC to be the one-stop shop of all. Kami na yung maggagawa ng mga paglalakad, tapos bibigyan na lang siya sasabihan na lang siya kailan ka babalik. Kasi if you talk to these informal settler organizations, they have been spending so much sa application lang, sa follow-up. Siyempre, kung nasa Mindanao, mag-e-aeroplano pa yung kanilang presidente. Kung hindi marunong sa Manila, magdadala pa ng isang marunong sa Manila. So, it has really been very tedious, very expensive for all of them. So, ito po yung aming target. Hopefully, before the end of the year, we would be able to come up with a less bureaucratic system already. Proclamations, I mentioned this a while ago. Proclamations currently undergo a long and tedious process, bogged down as well by issues on land suitability and adverse claims. So ito we, in the executive order that we are asking the President to sign, we also requested that DENR be made part of the committee. Kasi yung proclamations, wala sanang bawi-bawi if DNR was on board already from the very start, because they will of course have to assess the suitability before the land is proclaimed as suitable for housing. Ang nangyayari po ngayon, na-proclaim na, saka i-review ng DENR. So we also plan to change that. There are proclamations now with long-standing issues. I told the committee a while ago about Mangan, Floodway, Adipang Arenda. HUD-C will lead all interagency efforts to resolve these issues. We're doing that now. For future proclamations to unlock government land for housing, HUD-C will reinvigorate the Urban Asset Reform Program, which was there before. Ito po, yung lack of access to affordable housing finance. This is one area also that we should revolutionize. Kasi ngayon, just to simplify things, hindi talaga niya natatarget yung pinakamahihirap. Parang natatarget niyang pinakamababa yung minimum wage earners. Pero below that, talagang walang access to housing finance. So, we want to look into the system. Kasi yung nandyan po ngayon, mga mortgage-based products. Ang problema, wala ngang pang-collateral yung mga tao. So, mortgage-based products are not suitable for ISFs, given their circumstances. ISFs are not formally employed, occupy land that may not be used as collateral, and formalizing ownership is costly. So, HUD-C will work with the key shelter agencies in developing non-mortgage-based products tailored for the underserved and low-income families. Last two slides na lang po.
Just a very basic question. How much would a home, a settlement of an ISF cost when we're talking about below the minimum wage earner for the ISF?
Right now, the average cost is about 175,000. But below 450,000 is still considered socialized housing. Pero yung ano po, may mga this is one thing I have yet to unlock, Madam Chair. Merong mga arrangements, halimbawa for a 450,000 house with Shaft C, ang hulog po is about 1,700 a month. With Pag-ibig, it's slightly more. It's I think 2,400. Pero yung mga AFP-PNP housing po, it's about 175,000 with discount from government. Parang 145,000 na lang. Pero they only pay for the first 4 years. GM, ano po, no? 200 pesos. 200 pesos. But this is AFP-PNP housing. So, sa akin lang, bakit hindi ganun din yung arrangement for informal settler families? Parang graduated po. First few years is 200, next few years, pataas ng pataas. Parang the concept is, magiging mas maayos na din yung buhay nila. So that's what we're looking at. Yung ano po ng NHA, yung programang yun ng NHA, we want to replicate that to ISF families. Kasi po ngayon, yung 1,700, masyado mataas for them. Talagang maraming mga hindi nakakabayad. So, talaga yung turnover din ng pera ng gobyerno mabagal. We're also looking at yung walang-wala talaga, walang bayad. Pero ito yung programa ng Gawad Kalinga. It's usufructuary but they don't pay for anything. So to make things simpler, we're open really to looking at all the modalities out there. So currently, HUD-C is evaluating many partnership proposals from the private sector. Once the new leadership of the KSAs have been appointed and HUD-C has coordinated coordinated a common and comprehensive strategy for the housing sector, HUD-C and the KSAs will hold a housing summit, which is an offshoot of the summit done by Senator JV, Congressman Albi, and the rest of the agencies to pick the interest and mobilize some investments from the private sector in socialized housing. As I've said, we have models already of this. The one in Quezon City and FINMA, yung mangyayari po doon, pinapadonate sa private yung lupa. Yung lupa donated by private, yung prime area sa harap, dinedevelop ng private for commercial and more high-end. Yung sa likod naman, yun yung for ISFs. And it's been working in Quezon City. I don't see any reason why it won't work elsewhere. Last slide. Addressing the affordability levels of low-income families can be addressed also through, number one, implementing an income-based subsidy scheme, since ISFs have really a very diverse profile. Not all are income poor, and an income-based subsidy would direct more resources to those in the lower income brackets as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. Ngayon kasi parang one-size-fits-all siya. So yung tinitingnan natin, mas iba-iba yung subsidy na binibigay. Mas mahirap, mas malaki yung subsidy, mas hindi mahirap, mas maliit din. Number two, lowering the cost of housing through incremental development. Ito po hindi pa natin tinatry. Parang yung sa atin kasi ready na yung bahay. Yung, I think Thailand also did this. Yung sa kanila po, incremental, parang basic lang muna, pero you're allowed na i-improve through time. So, mura lang muna yung bahay. Pag meron ka available na pera, you can improve. I think this can also work. Number three, yung sinabi ko pala, offering also non-mortgage-based financing products and pursuing other modes of tenure, such as public rental housing, usufructuary, etc. And the last, revisiting the building code and other relevant laws and rules towards streamlining regulations that unnecessarily drive up costs. Yung building code kasi doesn't differentiate. Yung requirement niya sa mga mahal na housing, ganun din yung requirement niya sa low-cost housing. So, we really need to sit down with everyone para ma-adjust ito. That will be all, Madam Chair.
Madam Vice President, any questions? Yeah, we can proceed with the next. Is there another agency that will present? No more. Yes.
All the 6 agencies will be presenting their own.
Okay. HUDCC first? Or
it was for HUDCC already, Madam Chair.
That was HUDCC, So, we have NHA.
We start with what? HGC?
Yes, Senator Risa, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we hear from the heads of the key shelter agencies, I have maybe just a couple of questions for the Vice President Leni. Thank you, Madam Chair. Nabalitaan nga po namin, and then kinuwento nyo nga kanina na you've been visiting the resettlement areas. And nabasa rin na last week dun sa pagdalo nyo sa Bulacan, you actually wanted to halt the production of new houses or the construction of new houses. Ano po yung nag-prompt sa inyo in the first place to conduct these visits, particularly of resettlement areas?
Madam Chair, we have been receiving complaints, either through text, karamihan text messages, may mga sulat sa office namin, may mga pumupunta, maraming reklamo. So it is very difficult for me to act on a complaint pag hindi ko mismo nakita yung pag hindi ko mismo nakita yung sitwasyon. And every visit is really an eye-opener. Kasi pag tiningnan nyo yung records ng opisina namin, parang maayos. Halimbawa, yung binisita ko sa Bulacan, if you look at the reports, parang it isn't as serious as it really was. Pero when we went, I was telling this to our NHA general manager when we met last week. Parang pumunta ako, maraming problema yung houses. Every time we go in, marami ng cracks. Parang 3-4 years pa lang yung project. Pag tiningnan nyo yung papeles namin, nakalagay doon na package siya. Package in the sense na nandun na lahat. Pero pag binisita mo and you interview the families, iba naman yung sinasabi. So, I think it is really imperative na binibisita namin. Pag hindi ako kung sino sa opisina. And, parang assess. I was even, yesterday, I met with the HUD-C people. I was even asking them, do we have an audit team? Pero yung audit team daw kasi namin internal. Sabi ko, hindi ba pwede na parang multisectoral yung audit team? Na, kasi we can only go even if we go to all this, even if I spend every day visiting this, I won't be able to go to each and every relocation site. So I was asking them, don't we have an audit team to help us evaluate ito? Wala. Number 2, tinatanong ko nga, do we have a department here or even a section that will just take care of all the complaints? Wala din. So, yun yung mga pagbabagong gagawin sa office. Sabi ko, I think it will help the office pag kina-crowdsource talaga yung lahat na information rather than binabasa lang sa papel, Madam Chair. Kasi most probably yung sa papel parang pag sinabi sa iyo na we're almost 70% done at naniwala ka na hindi mo binisita, parang the reality is not really like that at all.
It's all right, Madam Chair. I think, okay. Just one follow-up, but I think also Senator Win has an interjection. Madam Chair, parang maganda nga among other ideas or proposals of OVP and the key shelter agencies, for one, itong ideya ng isang multi-sectoral audit team so that from the beginning pa lang of the housing, urban development, even resettlement process, kung saan mas malaking papel in the past few years ang ginagampanan ng mga people's plans na bunga ng partisipasyon ng mga informal settlers, all the way up to the end of the process or end of one cycle of the process, may audit na yung iba't ibang sectors, iba't ibang stakeholders ay may papel din to ensure the quality and the sustainability of the programs. Earlier, VP Leni, I heard you say something about people don't want to move into some of these resettlement areas na hindi pa talaga fully suitable. So, many of them still stay along the original Metro Manila waterway. So, sinasabi po ba natin na yung mga informal settlers natin na sinusubukan natin i-resettle, they're actually still in the danger zones or part of their families, lalo na heads of household, income earners, are still in the danger zones?
Yes. Ano yun? I think NHA can expound on that earlier. Pero I was telling NHA that shouldn't be happening. SHAFC has a very good model for this. It's called People's Plan, where the ISF families themselves are involved every step of the way, from planning to execution to monitoring to evaluation. I have visited some communities already na based on People's Plan. There's one in Pasay, yung Corinay. There's also a huge one in Valenzuela. It is also based on People's Plan. Yung okay sa People's Plan kasi if they themselves plan, sila yung pumipili saan sila lilipat, tumutulong lang yung gobyerno, we don't encounter problems such as this. Yung problema ng NHA na una, a relocation site was actually intended for, let's say, hypothetical lang to, Madam Chair, let's say this was intended for 1,000 beneficiaries. Nung naglipatan na 300 lang yung lumipat, yung 700 nagpalit ng isip. Diba? That isn't acceptable. Pero with the Shopsys People's Plan concept, it doesn't happen because they themselves plan and they're involved every step of the way. So they have a stake at it. Parang hindi lang sila beneficiary, pero they have ownership of the project. And the complaints are very minimal kasi they're involved in the implementation. Pero if government does everything, naghihintay lang sila, dun marami yung reklamo. Hindi sila napakinggan, hindi ito yung gusto namin, yung design is not according to our specification, yung lugar ayaw namin. It would have been prevented had they be consulted from the very start.
Madam Chair, without prejudice to hearing further on this later from NHA and SHAPSI, just one more question at this point in time for OVP, but in relation to of course, the housing programs. Binanggit nyo rin kanina, VP Leni, yung two major infrastructure projects na concerned din po ako, yung Laguna Lake Expressway Dike at saka yun pong North Rail Project. Although alam naman po natin, Madam Chair, na NHA usually is the one to implement these projects, I wonder if also the LGUs and the other housing agencies will also be playing a role. Although narinig din po namin sa ibang hearings na yung relocation sa North Rail, even South Rail projects sa ilalim na ng Department of Transportation. I think I have some questions about that also. Pero just for this morning, posible ba na yung mga LGUs natin at saka yung ibang KSAs will also be playing a role? And para din i-facilitate yung sinasabi nyo kaninang exploring new options, not just in the housing and the urban development models, pero particularly dito that people will be given a say, maybe a veto even on proposals na kung saan sila i-relocate. And tulad sa People's Plan, they can fully participate, design, or even just accept yung mga projects na i-deliver ng NHA, Madam Chair.
That is exactly our proposal, Madam Chair. Mababawasan talaga yung maraming problema if they are included already. There is just one modification that I'm suggesting as far as the People's Plan concept is concerned, and I've discussed this with SHAPSI already. Kasi the model of the People's Plan was actually replicated from the Naga model. Pero the difference with what we're executing now is that even with regards to negotiations with the landowner, yung bibilhan, yung informal settler organizations pa din yung gumagawa nun. And my suggestion is that after they have planned it out, government should help in negotiating with the landowners. Kasi paminsan, they go through so much pain. Paminsan, hindi sila haharapin, hindi kakausapin. Pero when it's government who does the negotiations, there's moral ascendancy, di ba? Parang, ito yung paggamit siguro ng influence naman sa tama na, halimbawa, if LGU does it, there's always the threat of, di ba, parang, again, si Senator Sherwin was mayor before. It's different if the mayor negotiates compared to if the informal sector organization negotiates. But the People's Plan now, sila yung nag-negotiate. So that's my suggestion. Pero ano naman to? The model is actually evolving. So we're very confident that mape-perfecto din natin to in the soonest possible time.
Salamat, Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Sherwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. VP, I do agree, no? Earlier, you mentioned that in terms of housing finance, karamihan po ng mga products and offerings natin cater to the middle class. Maybe a little bit of the middle-low income earners. However, yung mga informal and in your terms, laylayan ng ating lipunan, wala ho talagang housing products available for them. However, I think when we offer housing products to them, we will be venturing into direct subsidies. Is that something that you are also looking at, Madam Chair?
Yes, actually we're really looking at direct subsidies for the very poor. Right now, it seems to be the only way that they would have access to housing. Ano talaga? marami ng anggulong tiningnan. Pero I think the indirect subsidies is the way to go. And I think it can be done if we conceptualize it in a socialized way, in the sense that those who have more would have less, diba, parang less help. I think they would understand.
I do agree, VP, na I think we will really go into direct subsidies. Ganun yung experience namin sa Valenzuela. With that public rental housing scheme, 300 pesos lang po yung binabayad nila. But if you impute yung return and mortgage type of operation, hindi ho talaga kasya yung 300. So, government and the local government, malaking subsidiya po yung binibigay. But we view housing as a social need, just like education. And I think that's another paradigm shift that the HUD-C should also look into, na ang housing ba is a commercial or economic program, or is it a social program? Dahil pag talagang i-impute ho natin yung returns, no, through a mortgage, hindi ho talaga kakayanin. Hindi natin ma-reach yung pinakamababa.
I would have to agree with that, in the sense that ngayon talaga, admittedly, it's being seen using a more commercial lens. Pero the reality also is that even if that is the lens that is being used, the returns talaga sobrang ang dami naman talaga hindi nagbabayad. And government cannot impose sanctions, kasi if you impose sanctions, babalik din sila sa dating problema. So the program really has to be, yun sabi mo, paradigm shift, in the sense that dapat yung nandyan mas realistic. Kasi even if we dream too far off, hindi naman talaga mangyayari.
VP, I think in most developing countries, yung initial nila is really subsidy. And as the economy grows, nagkakaroon ng purchasing power, then they move gradually to mortgage programs. No? Pero sa umpisa talaga, walang choice kundi. Sa akin ho, my view is direct subsidy.
Actually, Madam Chair, if you look at the models of Singapore and Hong Kong, that's what they did. But we're now looking at the model of Thailand, because we think that we have more parallelisms with Thailand, especially with Thailand is also using the People's Plan concept. Pero yung tinitingnan namin yung how they resolved housing dun sa mga nakatira sa mga danger zones, because there was minimal relocation. Ayun yung tinitingnan natin na konsepto. But again, it's really something that dapat pagtulungan ng lahat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, just one follow-up question. But first, I'd like to join with the view of Senator Win, the view of housing as a social good and a social program, like education, like health, like generating decent jobs. At kung ganun yung perspective natin, mas lalong magiging maluwag yung kalooban din ng gobyerno for those kinds of evolution of types of paying for these programs, na parang sa health din, parang sa Thailand din, una, malakas ang subsidy ng gobyerno, pero habang pinapakinabangan ng mga tao and their health conditions or their economic conditions improve, mas nababayaran nila whether yung housing needs or health needs nila over time. So, nagiging sustainable. But my follow-up question, Madam Chair, na-strike ako dun sa sinabi nyo kanina, VP, na in the past 6 years, only on average 1.135% of the annual national budget is allotted for housing. Naalala ko lang po kasi may mga gold standards yung for spending or as a percentage, say, of GDP for health, for education. Kung sa WHO, it's 5.6%. Kung sa UNESCO, it's 3.2%, something for health and education respectively. Sabi naman ni Sec Joc nung ibang hearing na mahirap i-correlate directly yung GDP sa budget. But sa pagkakaalam ninyo sa housing sector, meron bang parang gold standard ng percentage of budget na magandang i-target for housing na pwede nating i-target din to reach kahit na within the next 6 years until end ng term nyo?
Actually, meron, Madam Chair, inaalam lang namin ulit. But you know, when we say 1.135 on the average during the last 6 years, that is the best in our history. Because before 2011, we were averaging less than 0.5%. Yung gold standard, Madam Chair, is 2 to 5% of GDP. And we're just at 0.12% now. So talagang sobrang layo natin sa gold standard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Magandang targetin siguro, and I'm sure with the leadership of Sen. JV sa Senate Committee on Housing and Urban Development, we can study that. Salamat po.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Likewise, for the information of the Chair, we were able to pass the Balanced Housing Act last year, no, which I think will be very instrumental in the thrust of VP Leni, that the in-city housing should be the direction that we have to take, especially in Metro Manila, because, Madam, before, medium-rise housing cannot be classified as socialized. Now, with this act, it is now classified as a socialized housing. It can be considered as socialized housing. And likewise, the developers the condominium developers in Metro Manila are now obligated to allot 5% of their total project cost now for socialized housing. Madam, the way I see it, no, based on our discussion this morning, Senator Sherwin and I were discussing a big factor, a big chunk of our success in San Juan and Metro Manila is because the LGUs were very supportive. And napakalaking factor kasi yung the biggest probably factor is the land. Napakamahal kasi. And probably if we can set, probably we would be willing to support and coordinate with you, Madam, that we can ask the local government unit, especially in Metro Manila first, no? Probably we can start with the NCR. If we can if we can meet them and probably encourage them to make this a priority, because I don't think it will be possible, Madam Chair, for kahit na ilang bilyon ilagay natin dito, but without the land component, which is the biggest part of the success of a housing project, mahirap din no? I would agree with Vice President Leni for you to for your call to have a moratorium, kasi sayang lang I was discussing with the chair that we are throwing away money and nobody is the percentage of those occupying the housing is 20% or even less. So might as well have a moratorium, probably talk with the local government units if they can already identify the land that they can provide for housing, and then the NHA can build Yung sa Valenzuela and San Juan, we provided the land and NHA was the one who financed the medium-rise housing. One example, Madam Chair, before we move on lang, for example, yung sa Fairville, probably everyone knows that. That's about a 70-hectare property in Mandaluyong. There was a proposal to award those properties as is where is to the informal settler families, but it was proposed in our committee last year, Madam Chair, but Senator Osmeña and Senator Honasan said that we can redevelop the area. If we redevelop it with medium-rise housing units, it will only the occupants will only occupy about 40% of the total land area, and that 60% is now that area is now free for development, and that can provide already the jobs and the livelihood already for the residents. So this is just one example. No? Probably if we can do that in the rest in Metro Manila, at least San Juan and Valenzuela, we are not one of the biggest or the richest LGUs in Metro Manila, but we are able to do it. So that's my proposal, Madam. We will closely coordinate with you, especially yung mga I would like to ask Madam Chair, yung products of the Housing Summit. I think the LGU will play a key role in the success of the housing program. And Madam Chair, I commit already we will try to rush the Department of Housing, because as you mentioned, it's really hard to have 6 different agencies doing things simultaneously, but different things, no, with different mandates. So it would really be easier to house them in one department. So hopefully we can So as suggested by the chair, if we can have it this year, we'll try. Hopefully, when I come back from my vacation, hopefully we can pass this already.
That's the reason why you cannot go on your vacation. You have to finish this. But seriously, and I'm serious about that. Since we have two former mayors here present, why don't you help VP Leni in asking your co-mayors in the 18 ba? 17 plus 1. 17 plus 1. 17 cities, 1 municipality in Metro Manila to allocate the land because they're still waiting for the inventory from this government agency. Let's speed it up. And you divide North and South Metro Manila. Kayo na lang, ihati nyo, kayo na magtanong. Tawag lang kayo sa mga colleagues nyo at sabihin, ano ba ang available dyan for housing for informal settlers. And then they'll allocate that and give their administrators to the Office of the Vice President and to NHA. I'm sure masaya sila dyan. Popondohan natin through NHA ang kanilang in-city sa ISFs and you can prioritize that, hindi ba? Kayo na magtulong dalawa since kailangan nyo lahat.
Madam Chair, we'll gladly help, but probably Vice President Leni can send the invitation because these are 17 kingdoms, so it will be hard for us to invite them. But if VP Leni would invite, it would be easier.
They will only need to identify the land and to donate it. And then NHA will fund it. They will be liberated from a problem that has been there with them. Botante pa rin nila yun. Nandun pa rin sa kanila. Kasi alam ko kayo mga mayor, ayaw yung linalabas sa inyong turf ba yun? Kasi mawawalan ba ng botante? Ganun, I don't know. That's what people always say. Kung totoong ganon, hindi ba? Ayaw nila linarelocate at pinapabalik or hindi pinapaganda ang mga relocation dahil mapawala ang mga botante. Hindi ko alam kung ganyan ang totoo.
Madam Chair. Sige. Madam Chair. Actually, we have been meeting with the Metro Manila mayors already, but the suggestion of Senator JV is well taken. Maybe it would even be better if we all have them in one setting, considering that maybe the best practices can also be presented there. Because what we're doing now is meeting them separately. I met
Perhaps you could issue an invitation for breakfast or lunch, and then you could invite the two former mayors, and they could just show 5-minute presentation yung inyong financial model and even the housing model, and then NHA can be there.
We will do that as soon as we can, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the suggestion.
Senator Rizal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a follow-up to that, iniisip din po ba ng OVP and the KSAs na aside from the initial 50B program in Metro Manila to conceptualize something about Metro Cebu and Metro Davao? Kasi it would also, if these two metropolises will do something similar, magsasend ng magandang signal sa ibang cities in Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao habang umuusad yung regional development at mag-iis sana yung in-city migration dahil pinapaganda natin yung mga living conditions sa bawat rehiyon, pero the two efforts can meet halfway. Maayos na resettlement relocation programs from at least the major urban centers muna, and then yung a greater pull for people to stay sa kanilang mga rehiyon dahil pinagaganda natin yung economic status doon.
Actually, Madam Chair, we haven't talked about Metro Cebu and Metro Davao yet, although I was in Cebu already to also inspect some of the housing projects there. And in fact, it was in Cebu where SHAFC and HLURB entered into a memorandum of agreement. Pero I think that's a very good idea to already include, kasi right now what is in the pipeline is Metro Manila plus Region 4 and Region 3. But it will be a good idea to already include Metro Cebu and Metro Davao. So thank you very much for the suggestion.
We were just talking about also, I'm not certain if it's being implemented, to make the local governments and the barangay captains accountable for the proliferation of additional informal settler individuals or families in their barangays, because we are bursting at the seams the way it is now. Is it possible for the housing agencies or the Vice President to issue a friendly reminder may not be legally binding, but just a friendly reminder that this is a situation now, and effective immediately, we hope that you will not encourage more informal settlers coming into your LGUs and monitor, please, your barangay captains. Is that being inhumane? No, it's preventing them from going into more dangerous zones.
I would have to admit, Madam Chair, that our problem is, I think Senator JV and Senator Sherwin know this for a fact, that we have really very few very proactive local chief executives. So it will really be a big help if the ILG is already on board, because through the ILG we can do all these things. Through the ILG we can require them to have their own local housing boards already. The bill of Senator JV for each local government unit to have their own housing offices. It will be easy already if the ILG is on board. And even before the passage of that law, as you have said, it can be friendly reminders, but if it is the ILG who would remind them, for sure the LGUs will follow, because the ILG is the one having direct supervision over them. But hopefully in the next few weeks, hopefully, the executive order can be signed already. That's a limitation, Madam Chair. We want to do so much, but because we don't have the mandate to do it, we still have to go through the office of the President. It's really a circuitous process, but it's the only thing that we can make things going as of now.
We will no longer hear the budgets of each and every shelter agency, since you had given us the macro, but we actually know the problem, and every year we discuss this, no? And there's much work to be done. I actually have loads of questions too, but again, we cannot solve it by just talking to each other. We can communicate closely. I just want to know from NHA, funds were given for the resettlement of families in the Manila Bay area based on the Supreme Court continuing mandamus on the cleanup of Manila Bay. Are you part of the departments or the agencies that should implement the continuing mandamus on the Manila Bay area?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Funds were allocated for this year.
Yes, Madam Chair.
For, is it resettlement of informal settlers, or is it cleanup?
Resettlement, Madam Chair, but
Yes.
we do not accept, or we do not implement the whole amount. We were only given a share of the 50 billion pesos.
The 50 billion pesos of
Was
10
not given
billion
all to
a
NHA.
year is the implementation of the Manila Bay decision. Is that how it is?
Yes, Madam Chair. I'd like to, for the details, Madam Chair, if you allow me, because I just assumed into office, our corporate secretary is here to tell us of the details of all the things that NHA had been through in all of the projects at the national level. Engineer Big Balba is here, Madam Chair, if you may allow him.
Madam Chair.
You recognize Senator Joel Villanueva?
Madam Chair. If I can be excused already, Madam. Yes, I will be presiding over an education roundtable also in my office. So may I be excused,
In
Madam?
fact,
And anyway, everyone will be left behind.
Yes. We appreciate your presence, and you came very early today. We thank you for your presentation. We're here to support you.
Thank
And
you
I
very
reiterate my commitment that if we are able to pass the housing bill, I'm the principal author pala. Yes, it's a refiled measure I've done in the past since 2007. I've been filing that. So if that can be passed into law, we will find the funding for that in the 2017. I hope we don't have to wait for 2018 to fund it. In the meantime, I'm here to help you. Per our suggestion, to meet with the LGUs of Metro Manila, with our former mayors, and you could invite perhaps the Secretary of the ILG to join you, and Secretary Gina also of DNR. That would be really I'm a text away, VP Leni. Just let us know.
Thank you very much, Madam
And
Chair.
I'll make them leave in a few minutes. Just a few questions on the Manila Bay area, because that is a Supreme Court decision way back in 2008, implemented in 2009. I just want to know whether NHA is on the ball with the other agencies of government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, members of the committee.